Now let's get some more insight into how those latest GDP figures, and we're now being joined by Mr. Paul Alaje, a senior economist with SPM Professionals. You're welcome to the news at 10.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, 1.9% in 2018 to 2.27% in 2019. Now, that must be cherry news.
Yeah, cherry news, indeed. It's better than where we were coming from. We're getting closer to population growth rate of 2.7 to 3%, depending on the authority we want to use. Either we want to use National Population Commission or we want to consider UNDP. Be it as it may, it's better than where we were. We are now on above 2% as against what IMF projected at 2.1%. But when you look at this holistically among African countries, 15 countries were selected. The first among them was Rwanda. Rwanda grew by 11.9% in the same period. And countries that are very close to Nigeria, talking about the Republic of Benin, it grew at 7.6%. Nigeria Republic, very close to us, grew at 6.1%. Of these countries, Nigeria only grew at last quarter at 2.55%. Now, while it is good where we were coming from, it is not sufficient because we still have a lot of lag, a lot of gap compared to our population growth. And when you grow at your population growth, you have seen or grown, it is net growth, which is, zero growth, I beg your pardon, because your population growth rate minus your economic growth rate, you must have, to a large extent, extra from your economic growth rate, which means you are producing more than the people that are consuming in layman language.
Okay, but we have the strongest growth since, this is the strongest quarter growth we've seen in a while. Does it mean then that we're fully out of recession, or is our growth still very fragile?
Nigeria has been out of recession, officially speaking, when you talk about the theory of it. Now, what Nigerians want to see perhaps is development and seeing that this growth we've said is 1.0, 2.0. We're beginning to see that this growth is now having impact on the people. So when you talk about recession, you're simply talking about theoretical approach of having two negative growth. And once you have positive growth, you are completely out of recession. But with this economic growth start impacting the people, how you feel that, how you check that impact is what is this on population, what is it on inflation, I beg your pardon, what is it on unemployment. Unemployment is still 23.1% of the labor force. And what is it saying on inflation? Inflation has gone beyond 12%. We are now at 12.13%. So when you look at all of these, you see that, yes, we need to sustain this growth for a long time before it starts having impact directly on the people.
Is it sustainable when you look at the fact that government policies also changed towards the end of last year? We had border closure. We also have VAT going up this year. For you, do you think this growth is sustainable?
The biggest challenge is not even border closure. Neither is it inflation. The biggest challenge is coronavirus. And I'll say this to you. Most of the business that happen in Nigeria are imported. One of their biggest trading partner is China. Now, coronavirus in China is not a good thing, morally speaking. But economically speaking, countries like Japan and Thailand have positioned themselves because come April, some of these manufacturers will relocate from China and be looking for where country of destination to continue their business because economics must continue. It must happen. Now, is Nigeria prepared, particularly for what is happening in China right now? Because you could see reports coming from China shows that the economic growth rate, GDP growth rate in China continue to reduce because of coronavirus and not having solution to coronavirus. So is it sustainable for Nigeria? I don't think so. It's not sustainable for now. We might still have this growth very slow. It might fall at some point. It might increase at some point. But are we going to have that double digit like we see in Rwanda, 9%? I don't think so. There are things Rwanda have done. When investors want to invest in countries with a huge population, they consider which country will they go to. They look at security issues, they look at government policy consistency, and so on and so forth. Nigeria have not made those policies yet. But so it's not for us to be sad. We should be happy that we're better than where we were before. But government and authorities need to do more so that we can get this growth beyond population growth rate.
It's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you, Mr. Paul Alaje. He's a senior economist with SPM Professionals.
Thank you so much for that.